Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, host of Rink-Wide Vancouver, and he's on the ground there in Nashville and joining us from Bridgestone Arena. First and foremost, how's the town, Jeff? Looks fun.
Yeah, I was able to get out onto Broadway last night, controlled. I'm here for a few days, so you got to ease into it. But it was a long day. There was no easy way to get here. I transferred through Dallas. I had to sprint through the airport. I'm glad you guys didn't get video of that, literally with bags in tow, running to make my connector. But I did, and I'm here and on the ground in Nashville. And yeah, I was out on Broadway is the main drag there. And as you can see with the video, it ends, and there's Bridgestone Arena. So it's an incredible setup, and place is going to be hopping tonight, no doubt about that.
Yeah, is the town is the atmosphere already arrived, or are you expecting that later Friday?
Yeah, I think you get a sense. It's like most cities, car flags and storefronts that have Predators merch and lots of signage around. Again, it's Nashville's marathon this weekend as well, so there's going to be a lot of people in town here, not all for the hockey game, but it is a big party town, and I can imagine the mood and the vibe out on the street after this game, if in fact the Canucks, or rather the Predators, are able to take their first lead in this series. So it'll spill out at Bridgestone and right out onto Broadway. Should be a big Friday night here, regardless of the outcome of the hockey game. But if the Preds win, I would think the mood would be just that much better.
And one more question before we get on to the hockey. I saw you tweet you're expecting some star power on the anthem, are you?
Well, it's kind of funny. On the game notes, they've got a name down for the Canadian anthem, and under the Star Spangled Banner, it just says TBA. And we know that on that Stanley Cup run back in 2017, certainly the town of Nashville, the city of Nashville, caught Predators fever. And I think a lot of the star power here in the music industry wanted in. So this is their first home playoff game of this Stanley Cup playoff run. And yeah, I think the TBA probably tells you that they have twisted somebody's arm to come out and try and set the tone with a big anthem here tonight.
No shortage of talented singers in that town.
No, and my daughter is annoyed. I told her that they were actually making Tim McGraw tickets available to members of the media. Could you imagine that happening here? No, anyways, and she'd already been to the Tim McGraw concert here. She's 12 years old, massive country music fan, and she said, "Dad, you mean like you had a chance to take me to the Tim McGraw concert in Nashville, and you're not flying me over there?" I am not Father of the Year material, Jeff. Tyler Myers skated today. Does he look any worse for wear after his bout with the flu?
Well, he was one of the guys that opted out of the morning skate, but he practiced fully yesterday. And afterwards, Rick Tocchet said no reason to believe that he won't be good to go tonight. So, fairly sparsely attended, optional here after the full day of practice. But I thought it was interesting to see the star power that was out on the ice with Quinn Hughes and JT Miller, Brock Boeser, who left practice a little bit early yesterday. And there's, still this idea that he's battling through something that left him behind when they made the trip to Winnipeg there in game 82 late in the season. So Boeser took part and was fully involved as much as you can be in an optional skate. And, it's all about sort of getting the blood rushing and getting the feel of the puck. And, it was quick. I don't think anybody was out there for more than about 20 minutes this morning. 3 goaltenders on the ice with Thatcher Demko here on the trip, but he was not one of the ones on the ice. So 10 skaters and 3 goaltenders. That was the head count at morning skate, and now it's almost go time.
Our poll question, we were asking about whether or not the Canucks should reunite the Lotto Line full-time, or at least to start the game, because we're seeing more and more ice time for them together. We even saw some defensive zone draws in the last game. Nils Höglander gets benched for 14 and a half minutes to finish the game. So we saw more Lotto Line. Does it make sense given where this team's at offensively right now?
I've been a little disappointed that when Rick Tocchet has gone to Lotto Line, we really haven't seen much from those guys. And certainly there hasn't been a bottom line yet. And that is the biggest story of this series through 2 games for me, is the fact that the Canucks have 5 20-goal scorers on the roster, and not one of them has found the back of the net. Now, going through game notes from the regular season, and again, regular season is over, and you throw a lot of that stuff out the window, but there was not a 3-game stretch at any point over 82 games where one of JT Miller, Brock Boeser, or Elias Pettersson didn't score a goal. So we're sitting on 2 right now, and we'll see what happens. I guess if you go back game 82, they didn't score there, but Boeser didn't play, so I'm not really counting that one and these first 2. But, they've been consistent. Now, we know that Elias Pettersson hasn't been so consistent since the All-Star break, but just the overarching theme is that one of those three guys generally comes through for the Vancouver Canucks at some point. And so it sort of feels like a matter of time on that front. I don't know that you need to go full-time with Lotto Line. In fact, I would probably vote against that at this stage of the series. I think, desperation may set in and Rick Tocchet may have to look in a different direction at some point. But I think he's leaning on the fact that, 84 shot attempts, Quinn Hughes had 13 of them. JT had 10. Elias Pettersson had 9. Like, you want the puck on the stick of those guys in shooting positions. And so I think you just have to think if they can get anywhere close to that number, that something's going to happen for some of their top end players in terms of goal scoring. So I wouldn't reunite Lotto Line, maybe situationally, but I wouldn't go there full time yet, because I do think the Canucks believe that depth is still on their side. It's just a question of, can that depth show up and ultimately put the puck in the net, or are we going to be sitting here after game number 3 still waiting for some of the Canucks' best players to announce their arrival in this series? Well,
one of them, Nils Höglander. I mean, we talked about him getting benched in the last game. You wrote about him the other day on Canucks Army. 3 of the 5 20-goal scorers didn't even register a shot on goal. Höglander didn't register an attempt, period. What do we expect from this player right now, and how do you think the coach is going to respond to him? I mean, after benching him in the third period.
Yeah, I think he's going to start again on that line with Elias Pettersson and Ilya Mikheyev, but we saw in game 1 that Lafferty started there and Tocchet didn't wait long to make the switch. So in terms of, a top 6 role for Nils Höglander, and he's been there really for, since Christmas for this hockey club, but I don't know that his spot is absolutely locked in there. And yeah, he scored 24 goals for them, but he hasn't looked anything like that player through 2 games. Now, big stage, first look at NHL playoff action, all of that, but put the goals aside for a second. Like, the way that he played against the Calgary Flames in the final week of the regular season when the Canucks locked down the Pacific Division title, he was a thorn in their side. He was in the middle of absolutely everything. They were chasing him around the ice. Where's that Nils Höglander? Like, if he does those types of things, get him into the game, get him involved, and then maybe from there some of the offense will flow. But that's been the shock to me. And you're right, I wrote about it at Canucks Army, is like, yeah, you'd like offensive production, but I'm just amazed that we haven't seen the pest, the thorn in the side, the guy that, will give a stick to take a stick and all that kind of stuff. Like, where's that? This is a player that wins just about every puck battle he's in. And for quite frankly, I haven't even seen him involved in the puck battles, so he hasn't had a chance to come out with the puck. Yeah, they need more. Like, if you're in uniform, I don't care if you're a young player, if you have vast experience and have been through the battles, if you're in uniform here, you've got 2 games under your belt now. It's go time. Like, the Canucks just can't afford to keep waiting for some of these guys to show up and do what it is that they did in the regular season that allowed this team to win as much as it did and collect the 109 points.
Yeah, it's been quite a baptism for Höglander in his first Stanley Cup playoffs. Jeff, your biggest concern as this series shifts to Nashville, would it be goaltending in Casey DeSmith? Is it Pettersson? Is that power play that is yet to score? Or is it actually getting pucks on the goal as opposed to near the goal? What would be your biggest concern here?
I think it's the top end of this Canucks lineup that hasn't been good enough. And Philip Forsberg, he's got 3 points in 2 games. Ryan O'Reilly is a top line guy. He scored a power play goal. So some of the top liners for the Nashville Predators have been able to contribute. Again, there haven't been a lot of goals in this series, so nobody's absolutely lighting it up. But I do think now that we're 2 games in and the series has shifted, for me, the storyline is, all right, enough of this from the Canucks top end guys. I'm looking for star power to rise to the top here. And it won't matter who's in goal, quite frankly. If they hold Nashville to 15 shots, I guess it was 16 with the empty netter, I want to believe that Casey DeSmith is going to be able to do his part, but ultimately it won't matter whether it's him or Silovs. If they're not scoring and their top end guys aren't taking control of this hockey game. And that's where I go back to the shot attempts are great, but I don't think that we can come out of game 3 here talking about all the shot attempts the Canucks players had. Somebody has to cash in. There has to be a bottom line. So, I think Casey DeSmith can provide them enough goaltending to win this series, but they're not going to win this series if those best players that all had incredible seasons. I mean, 103 points for JT Miller. He's got an assist on an empty netter. That's his offensive contribution to this point in this series. So that's where I go back to. Certainly Miller and Hughes, they were remarkably consistent throughout the regular season. Petey has his issues, obviously, since the All-Star break. But Brock Boeser with his 40 goals, he scores in bunches. So the fact that he hasn't scored in 2, it wouldn't surprise me if he burst out and had a big night. But again, one thing to say it, it's time for those guys to get out there and actually make it happen.
1,000,000%. You can talk about chances in the regular season because you have bucket loads of games that are coming up and they're eventually going to go in. It is much more difficult to do that in a best-of-7 Stanley Cup playoff series, which of course is now a best-of-5 Stanley Cup playoff series. Jeff, you mentioned Arturs Silovs. How quick do you think the hook would be brought out if Casey DeSmith isn't going tonight?
I think he's got a little bit of leash here. Because if you turn to Silovs this early, then where do you go from here if it doesn't go well for him the rest of the night? So I'd be surprised if we saw him in game 3. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's impossible that we see him. But again, I think the Canucks can take the blueprint that they laid down the other night, control the puck, control the play, all those shots. You want to believe that they're going to be able to spend time in the offensive zone. I'm curious to see what kind of adjustments, what kind of matchup game we get from Andrew Brunette now that he's got last change here, because really we haven't seen that much of the matchup game through the first 2 games of this series, or at least as much as the chess match, I think, that we thought we'd see. But you ask about goaltending, I have to believe that this is Casey DeSmith's game, certainly. Like, I think he's got some leash, Matt. That said, you're right. Like, just like the players, the skaters, the Canucks can't afford to wait for guys to, find their game in this series. So if you're a Canucks fan, certainly you're hoping that Casey DeSmith holds up his end of the bargain and the night goes smoothly for him. If we see Arturs Silovs in this series, I mean, the fact that we're talking about going to a third stringer, obviously things haven't been going the way that the Vancouver Canucks wanted. So let's see how it goes for DeSmith. But Silovs showed down the stretch that Tocchet has some trust in him. And maybe at some point in the series, we do see the Canucks go to their third string guy.
What did Tocchet say Friday morning with regards to Demko? He was asked another question and just clarified he's week to week.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he provided a ton of clarity, quite frankly. The question was, can you clear this up? Because there have been reports that he's done for the year. There have been reports that we could see him again at some point in this series. Tocchet just said he is week to week. And we know that the last time he was week to week was the March 9th injury against Winnipeg, and that turned out to be the better part of 6 weeks. So I'm certainly not expecting to see him in this round. I know that there are reports that this is fairly significant, and he probably won't play even if the Canucks advance. But if anybody thinks it's day-to-day, Tocchet at least put it out there again today that we're going week to week is the official word from the hockey club on Thatcher Demko.
Yep. There was resounding support for the power play change we saw in this booth yesterday with Blake and I. I just think Lindholm's a better shooter, and I just think he's a better net front guy than Connor Garland. Do you anticipate that change will stick? And how do you think he may help this power play?
Yeah, and you look at the goal that he scored in Game 82 in Winnipeg was the deflection, the first game that he played for the Canucks, net front presence in Carolina. So, those are goals that, for the most part, Connor Garland hasn't scored in terms of the tips and the deflections. Garland's willing to get in with the, nose dirty, get to the blue paint, but Connor Garland is not a shooting threat. We see that, and so does the opponent. And it doesn't matter if it's Nashville, even down the stretch when Garland was the 5th member of that first unit power play, he would be out on his a right shot guy on the left flank, and teams would just let him float there and drift there because they knew that even if the puck went to him, he wasn't going to shoot it. And so really in some ways, it's almost like 4 scoring threats against 4 defenders with Connor Garland. So I like this. I think Lindholm is just a more dangerous player in a lot of ways. And what was there wasn't working for the Vancouver Canucks. So why stick with it? Again, I think you can't wait to make these kinds of changes. So, I applaud that one from Rick Tocchet. Whether it works, we'll find out. But they're 0 for 8 in this series now, or 0 for 6 in the series. That's not getting it done. So, this power play has to be a weapon. I think they recognize that. And we'll see just by throwing a different wrinkle at the Predators as well. Maybe you keep them on their toes when it comes to their penalty killing strategies.
How much is it also the fact that, look, you're giving up Garland's ability to create retrievals, which is something Tocchet's a fan of, but he also has the puck on his stick a lot, as opposed to just being that front guy. And, maybe is there a thought that, look, we need the puck more in JT Miller's hands, in Quinn Hughes' hands, maybe Elias Pettersson's hands, as opposed to Garland, which just the puck gravitates to him when he's out there?
Yeah, and again, when it's on his stick, the entire building knows that it's not going to. He's never taking a slap shot. I don't know that I've ever seen Conor Garland take a slap shot, and yet he fakes it. The puck comes to him, and he always fakes the slapper. And again, these teams are so heavily scouted and so well prepared now that the Predators know that Conor Garland's not really a threat to shoot from the flank either. So, Lindholm's a bigger body, can get to the front of the net, maybe more of a handful for some of those defenders, engage them in front of the net, maybe push them out of the way a little bit to create some shooting lanes. Whatever the case, I just think that it's the right move at the right time. Doesn't guarantee success, and it's not a knock on Conor Garland and all the good things that he does for the Vancouver Canucks, but he seemed to be the guy that you would take off that power play grouping. And so Lindholm's next up, and let's see what he can do with the opportunity.
What are you thinking stylistically from Nashville different now that they're at home? Do you expect to see some matchups? Do you expect to see them try to open it up and get into their transition game? What do you see there?
Yeah, I expect to see them block a whole bunch more shots, whether they're at home or away. Doesn't matter. I mean, that's in their DNA now. But yeah, look, I think this team showed in the second half of the season that they are a dominant force when they get going, when they're able to play the way that they want to play. They haven't had the puck much. And so credit to the Vancouver Canucks. I'm curious to see. It's hard to call the other night a low event night when you have 84 shot attempts, but low shots on goal. I'm curious to see where the shot totals go in this hockey game. Obviously, the Canucks want to get it up higher and test UC Saros, but I do think that the Predators are going to want to skate and try and open things up here and take some chances. And so, Andrew Brunette's got last change. He's going to have that matchup capability now. And I am curious to see. I would think that JT Miller and his line would draw, whatever attention that the Predators want to throw at them in terms of setting the matchup. I almost feel like the Predators are going to dare Elias Pettersson to, announce his arrival in this series, if you will, that we just haven't seen anything from Petey yet. And it's almost like the Predators probably just want to let him lie there and keep doing his thing. And at some point, maybe they have to pay attention to him, but he just hasn't been that player that we've all seen at spurts throughout this season and earlier in his career. So kind of curious to see what Andrew Brunette and his coaching staff do in the way of matchups. But as we saw on the road, like he set his lineup, he starts his fourth line, and the Canucks took JT Miller and put him up against Michael McCarron, and it kind of stayed that way through those first couple of games. Lindholm got a little bit of the O'Reilly matchup at times. We'll see how things unfold here in Nashville, but the Canucks don't control the change. And, how many times have we heard guys, Rick Tocchet, throughout this year talking about the importance of line changes? And if he's trying to get away from matchups, then, there is zero margin for error in slow changes, poor changes, too many guys on the ice. Sometimes when you're the road team and you're trying to work your way away from matchups, that's where you run into some trouble. So Canucks took a lot of too many men on the ice penalties throughout the regular season. They haven't yet here in this series, but just something to be mindful of as we work our way through game 3 here tonight.
Yeah, Preds were screaming for one the other night, actually, and took one themselves. Jeff, last question, big one. Can you stop by the discount souvenir shop for Tim McGraw and get Farhan's daughter a little pic?
She's already got a shirt from the concert here.
Oh, she doesn't need any more souvenirs?
No, she's Tim McGraw. She's filled to the brim.
All right. What you got planned for Rinkwide this weekend, Jeff? Let everybody know.
Yeah, well, we're here in Nashville, so we'll take in the games. Irf's going to hold down the fort back in studio right after the game, and then I'm going to go down to the locker rooms, get some reaction, and jump on as quickly as I can after the coaches' press conferences, and we'll break it all down as we always do, all of our usual features, and looking forward to it, and we'll see. It's game 3. This isn't absolute do or die, but Canucks can wrestle back home ice advantage and put themselves in the driver's seat. If the Preds find a way to back up their win the other night to take a 2-1 series lead, some real adversity for this Vancouver Canuck team, and the stakes will go up for game number 4. So we'll have a thorough breakdown, full analysis, all of the listener and viewer feedback as well, and all of our regular Rinkwide features. So looking forward to it. We'll start right after the buzzer. You're in good hands with Irfan Gaffar, and then I'll jump on as quickly as I can.
Yep, great job. Live, of course, YouTube, many social media platforms. Awesome to have you back on the road covering the team, Jeff. Thanks for this, and we'll catch up on Sekeres and Price next week.
All right, guys, enjoy the game.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.